Runish, appreciate you hopping on today. Really excited to dive into this one, especially around cricket and sports tech and how you're merging all of it. So, as we hop into this and before we get deep into the details, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and ultimately how you ended up here building BatFast.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, for having me. And yeah, I'm quite excited to speak to you as well. I think over the last year or so, I've just kept following a lot of the stuff you're doing around the sports industry and raising awareness about it. So credit to you. And yeah, looking forward to it. I guess myself, I'm born and brought up in Kenya. So my family's all based there. I was lucky enough to play a lot of cricket growing up. I'm from an Indian background, and so it's very much sort of our sort of weekend or evening thing that we do with family. And so I got a taste of cricket very early on. I was a huge fan of the sport. And as I grew older, I realized that I had the opportunity to become better at it by focusing on it a little bit more. And so, as I went through my studies, I was lucky enough to play for the Kenyan national cricket team for a few years. So, I had a professional contract for 2 years. The Kenyan national cricket team is, I would say, the equivalent to a minor league baseball team. It's not, anywhere near the majors, but it's still a very good sort of grounding point. And the year I was playing professionally, Kenya had qualified for the World Cup, which is the equivalent of the World Series. And so it was a really good year to get exposure playing around the world. My head coach, assistant, fielding coach were amongst the best in the world. But also I got to travel and play against some of the best players in the world as well. So it was a very good grounding at that stage. But I also quickly realized, as many people do, that I never quite had the talent or I guess the boat had passed for me to go and try and make it to the majors. And how cricket was structured back then, the pathways were very limited for someone from a associate country, which is like Kenya, to go and play in the majors. It was not as democratized as perhaps it is now. And so I decided to pivot back into education. And so I completed my master's program, well, my undergrad and my master's program in the UK. Through that, I was always looking at business opportunities. I come from a community of Indians that do business. So everyone I know has done business all their life. And so I was very entrepreneurial, always wanted to do my own business. And, doing it in sports was the ultimate dream, I guess. So as I completed my master's program, we came up with the idea for BatFast. I did take a bit of time working in investment banking and then management consulting as we sort of really contemplated the work required to develop the concept. And so after about 2.5 years of doing so, we raised enough capital, and it's been about 7 years now that we've been full time on the business. So it's been a
Wow,
little bit of a journey, but it's been an exciting one.
that's awesome. And I'm curious, just as coming from Kenya and then playing national, what do you see cricket as a whole globally? Like, what are you paying attention to there? Because it seems to be much more in the limelight now for not just your traditional countries like a South Africa or an England or an India or an Australia, but now it's like creeping into the U.S. and it's we're seeing some of what you guys are doing and other concepts in social entertainment around cricket, even like social sixes here in the U.S. What are you seeing from cricket overall globally?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, like, the truth is that when we started out, it was very much few countries played cricket. There was a investment going into developing the game globally, but the truth is there's a massive gulf in ability when you look at the smaller countries and the bigger countries. But I think the rapid expansion of T20 cricket, which is the short format of cricket, means I think it is far less technical as a sport. It's a little bit more in the moment, which means that it does balance the playing field a little bit. And you saw in the World Cup a couple of months ago, the US beating Pakistan in a World Cup game. In long form cricket, which is 5 day cricket, that's almost unthinkable because the execution to execute consistently over 5 days is just that much more harder. So I think short form format has meant that it's made it a lot more accessible to many more people and many more countries. It's also meant that the interest in the sport has grown significantly, which naturally means more TV rights money, which then means investment back into the game. So that's really good for the sport. I do think that there is immense opportunity in cricket. Like, I spend now a lot of my time in the US. And the truth is that the US market is growing. I think the Indian market itself has amazing scope for growth. Just to compare, Major League Baseball itself, there's about 2,400 professional days of baseball, just the major leagues. In Major League, you add minor league to that, that almost triples up. In India, by comparison, that's less than maybe 700 days or so, and the IPL itself is only 76 days of cricket. So there's just a huge upside, and you compare the population of India and the population of the US. There's just so much opportunity to grow that as a sport. So yeah, I do feel very bullish about cricket. I do think it's going to get increasingly globalized. I do think that there is immense opportunities outside just traditional cricket. I think infrastructure, it's a sport with relatively nascent infrastructure. The US has very little infrastructure when it comes to playing cricket. So there'll be investments not just in broadcast or in fan engagement, but all the way down to, youth sport, youth participation, etc. Success Social is, one of our biggest partners, and so the work they're doing in trying to bring the sport to a new audience is phenomenal. And I think there's immense opportunity in a concept like that as well. I think it's been about 3.5, 4 years or so that they've been running, and in the UK especially, I think the data tells us that there's more people playing informal cricket through concepts like Sixes Social, compared to maybe people playing more formally. Because cricket is one of those sports that has a lot of innate or I would say innate complexity. And so if you can solve for that complexity to try and make the sport more accessible, it is a really fun sport to be part of. And so more people will play it. And almost like baseball, it is a sport that if you've grown up in it, you know it. If you've not grown up in it, it's very hard to get to know it. And in a way, golf was very similar as well, and that's why Top Golf had the impact it did. And so, I think cricket, baseball, these are just immense opportunities to try a different form of social entertainment concepts in these sports as well, not just in the core markets, but in non-core markets as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate the observations and the insight there. And I don't want to pin you down to just cricket either, right? Like we touched on that, but you guys are doing stuff in tennis, you're doing stuff in baseball as well. So maybe dive a little bit deeper into BatFast itself and the technology. And you had talked about a little bit what you're doing for social sixes, and what give us some more of the meat and bones on BatFast as you expand beyond cricket even too.
Yeah, no, really, really good question. So we started out with cricket. My background being in cricket, my co-founder, childhood friend, very, very good engineer, being from cricket background as well. So we were clear about two things, which is A, we wanted to be a technology company, and so we had to build great tech, and we had to focus on building great tech. And the second bit was, we wanted to start in cricket because that's what we knew really well. I guess you look for product founder market fit, and as founders, we just had a deep expertise in the sport. I had it more from a playing perspective, and my co-founder had it more from an engineering perspective as well. As we built our team, we were lucky that we got a lot of support from the UK ecosystem, and the UK is a great place for building out technology and concepts, especially when it comes to social entertainment, because it's a very closed market, and there's this closed ecosystem, so you can almost connect to almost anyone at any time. We were based out of Loughborough University, which is one of the best sports technology universities in the world, and we managed to get some serious traction through in cricket itself. So in 2016, when we released our cricket product, it's been on a very steady growth path as we've scaled the business. And what we realized with cricket is it's perhaps the most technical sport when it comes to what we do, more than baseball and more than perhaps tennis to a certain extent as well. I say that because cricket is a sport where the ball bounces, and so once it bounces, there's just so many different variations that could happen. And so, because we solved for that, we felt then to get our system to be able to do baseball was technically a little less challenging as opposed to perhaps more challenging. But also, as we've developed at a high level, we've developed automated ball throwing systems that get integrated with video projection systems. We have machine vision cameras that capture each shot. We've also got a proprietary LED target system that, from an entertainment or social entertainment perspective, we've sort of really been inspired by trying to make the sport more accessible and enjoyable. So having a visual, targets to hit gives instant gratification, but also in entertainment, we want to be a mass market. It should be applicable to everyone. And baseball, we've had to learn baseball from scratch, and similarly, a lot of people have to learn cricket, and you don't really know what you need to do to score. To score runs in cricket or to run bases in baseball. So by having targets placed across the cage, we feel it gives someone an instant, they know exactly what they need to do. It's simple, it's fun, it's engaging. Top golf, the TOP in Top golf stands for target oriented play. that the targets are very much integral part of their sort of concept. And so we have always been clear that that's what we wanted to build our entertainment concept around. And so as we developed it for cricket, fortunately we got a lot of interest in baseball. And being a tech company, you're always trying to understand how do you increase your target addressable market. We thought baseball, from a technical perspective, was a lot more manageable. And then, more importantly, we thought if we could expand our size, we could just learn of each other, each sports, and be able to become almost like a multi-sport ecosystem. Because the one thing we can do is we do create profiles for each players, and so if someone is playing cricket, we can then guide them to how to go and play baseball or the locations to play baseball in as well. So ultimately, if we can build an ecosystem, it just means we have a great infrastructure. We have a real good rollout of connected infrastructure that allows people to either go and entertain themselves or use our performance products to go and become better at the sport, which is naturally much more repeat use based or much more repeat use based model.
So, from a business model perspective, are you more focused on the actual facilities? Are you more focused on the tech, or there's events, sportainment? There's a training angle, it seems, to it as well. Potentially, where do you guys sort of sit to capture the value that you're giving to the end consumer?
Yeah, we're very much focused on the tech. We're a technology business. Our structure and our team is all focused on R&D and engineering. We do tend to work very closely with our partners who are deploying the technology. So that may be in some form of exclusive agreements or in some form of sort of deep relationships, which may be in the form of joint equity or joint ventures. The reason to do that is, we don't think that the concept, it's a physical hardware software product just to roll out. And so to roll out at scale quickly will take time. Topgolf has taken 25 years or so to open 100 facilities. It's anything location based does take time. And so, for us to keep investing back into the R&D, we needed to make sure we've got as many revenue streams into the business. And so, yeah, we're very much focused on partnering with really great operators like Sixes or other operators in other markets or across other sports to then develop the brand IP that they own, and then they can roll out, and then we own the tech IP that we can then partner with them on and have a very hands-on relationship to develop the product even better.
Makes sense. And in terms of traction, just reading a segment here from your team, but over the last, where is this, 3 years, participation of over 1 million players worldwide on the BatFast simulators, 1,000+% growth in players, 15 million balls delivered across the globe in 2023 alone. What do you believe, or what are some of the core factors of how you've been able to capture a ton of this growth over the last couple of years and really start to amplify this thing?
Yeah, I think like it's. I mean, post COVID, there's been a real sort of growth in the social entertainment space. Across different markets. I think people are craving to go out and enjoy themselves, but also real estate was in a position where, the early movers could really capitalize on great real estate. Cost of capital was lower. 2020, 21, 22. And so it's really helped benefit us partnering with really great people to roll out the concept. I think what we've been doing really well, I guess, is, again, just being very core and true to our core focus, which is building tech. I think as a team, we try to get very hands-on in each of the different verticals we're in by working very closely with best-in-class partners. The team we've got from go-to-market to product specialists to commercial, we try to be very closely knit to work with our partners to build a solution that helps them solve their challenges. We look at the performance space. The biggest challenge there is how do you make something accessible and affordable? And to do that, we've created a solution that's unstaffed. So effectively, people can go and hit as many balls in a very intelligent, automated solution with all their data being captured and uploaded online by themselves. And once you remove the cost of labor, suddenly your cost of running becomes really low, and therefore you can then really pass on those value benefits to the consumer. Similarly, when it comes to our fan activation, sort of vertical, we work very closely with some of the leading agencies, brands, and rights holders to understand what sort of space they've got available. And like the biggest thing we try to focus on is how do we engineer for space, because to find great real estate, be it in the social entertainment space or in fan activation space or even in the performance space, cities are getting more cramped. People don't have as much space anymore, and so we need to be delivering world-class experiences with space. So I think those little very hands-on approaches when it comes to go to market in each vertical really helps us build very customized solutions, which we can then test and then sort of standardize in order to then scale up. So we do have now scalable standardized propositions across multiple verticals, which allow us to then just keep scaling them and almost copy pasting with a few iterations and tweaks as we keep adapting to different markets and different user types.
Yeah, and speaking of different markets, you're in, I don't know, over a dozen countries thus far. Have you seen differences, or what are some of those differences? I guess is the better way to put it, between a U.S. or a Kenya or an England, or when you're selling, like what are you seeing on the ground? And maybe it's just good insight for other people building whatever to understand the nuances of each country, even.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think there's massive differences across different markets. I think we're in a very B2B business, and so ultimately our business partners have different types of consumers. Something like social entertainment in the US is still catching on. It's relatively well established, and you look at Dave and Buster's or Topgolf. There's already brands that are doing it, but it's still a very nascent space. It's not being spoken about as maybe now it is over the last 2 or 3 years, but it's still quite nascent. In other markets like Europe, or we've got work in Sweden or France or Belgium, in Africa or even Asia, Middle East. This is very new. This sector is very new. The first Topgolf opened in the Middle East like 3 years ago or so. So they're still understanding what social gaming looks like. So not as many investors available in market. Investors are looking at it from a different industry, and then trying to apply metrics and benchmarks based on that. So capital can be a little bit challenging for different customers. The users are not as used to the experience. And also running costs, right? Like cost of real estate in different markets is different. You look at a big country like Australia, your cost of real estate could be very different compared to perhaps a more congested market like Bombay, for that matter. And then also your staffing costs. In abroad, most countries, your cost of labor is quite high. And in some countries it's hard to find people to come and work in hospitality as well. So these are the certain bits that we try to do, so that wherever we're installing, we try to make sure that our customers get a good payback, which is according to industry standard. And that requires a lot of thought, and fortunately we've been doing it so long that we now know exactly what we need to do in each market. I would say that we are more strategic about certain markets. Where I'm based in the US as a founder. We started out in the UK, but I've moved out to the US to address the US market. My co-founder is based in the UK, and our team is based out of the UK as well. In other markets, we have partners that we work through, so we don't tend to own or operate businesses there. We tend to partner or license or sub-license to partners. So it's different approaches in each market, and we try to take markets where we feel we've got some kind of innate advantage of being in that market. And the US market for us is, across our three sports, cricket, baseball. I mean, cricket is just super, super fast growing in the US. Baseball and tennis, already well established sports in both these markets. Sorry, in across both these sports, really well established in the US. So we felt like the US market, and we did release a version of lacrosse within our system as well. And so we just felt like the US market was a no-brainer, especially as we keep scaling our business. We think the US will outshine perhaps most of our other markets.
Very cool. And uh, what's got you most excited? Heading over, you've done this 7 years now. I don't know your timeline or horizon or how you're thinking internally, but like, let's just say the next 5 to 7. What's got you excited? What's on the roadmap? What are you ready to really do to take this thing from? We'll just call it like it went. You went from idea to point A, and now you're going from point A to point B.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think like because we've been through a lot of macroeconomic environments over the last 7 or 8 years. Being in Britain, we faced Brexit, and we had COVID, and then we had the different wars and the macroeconomic challenges. I think like what we've ended up building is a very, very resilient culture and resilient business. Most of our team have been with us for over 5 to 6 years. We almost feel like we're hitting the sort of sweet spot when it comes to our sort of period of scaling up. I think what excites me the most is that I think we've got a very good foundation now to be able to build on. And actually, when we started, no one knew social entertainment. No one knew what cricket or baseball or tennis looked like in social entertainment. So we had to really educate the market, and that's a very expensive thing to do. Like we had a technical risk, which is will the product work in this sector, and we had to take a lot of risk and a lot of chance to say that we are confident it's going to work. We just need to build it. But then once we did that, we also then had a market risk because really no one really wanted to get into social gaming to do batting cages. In the US, everyone was afraid of so many different legacy things when it comes to batting cages. So I feel having now solved the technical risk and now the market really picking up, and it's great to see a couple of other people coming to market. I think it becomes far easier to be able to convince investors, real estate agents. Effectively just gives you a lot more traction and ability to scale up. I think our international markets are really great. So anything we do in baseball or tennis, we almost have a route to market in other sports as well. So in a very good sense, we feel very confident that I think we're going to be hitting our sort of peak period now over the next hopefully the next 7 years is no longer trying to convince why
Yeah,
it's going to work. It's telling people it's working. Now, how quickly do you want to move on it?
I love that. So where can people learn more? What's website, socials, or any good places to learn more about BatFast and all the cool things you guys got going on?
Yeah, our website, batfast.com, our socials, batfast sports across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, a good place for people to learn more. We do have numerous locations with our partners. So if anyone ever wants to, sort of try the technology, more than happy for, them to be connected. And we're launching a few locations of ours in different markets as well, the UAE, the US. And so and with the Olympics coming up in the US as well. So some really interesting stuff happening here as well.
I love that. Well, Runish, appreciate you hopping on today. This was fascinating.